Welcome to Backpacking America, an analytical podcast. What was like the moment in your life you realized that you wanted to do radio?
That's a good question. I think that for all of my life, I knew I wanted to do something that entertained people. I think that was for most of my life, going back to like being 3, 4 years old. I remember one thing I put into, like, if I'm writing a cover letter or anything, or I wrote anything about a career in media to anybody, my whole life, going back to high school, I always wrote about when I was a little kid. My mom used to watch The Price is Right. I remember this over summers. My mom used to have The Price is Right as on with Bob Barker. And I remember I thought it was so cool how he would come out from behind these, these curtains. It's like a paneled wall. These things would open up and he would come out and everyone would be clapping and cheering. He'd have his stick mic. He'd be saying, thank you. We had a guy announcing him. Everyone's so happy to see Bob Barker. And Bob Barker's job was what? Not really to do anything other than to just keep the game show moving along, say funny things when he had to, and just kind of guide the show, to be the host. And I remember watching that as 3 years old, and I would get a stick. I had like a little drumstick because I had like a fake drum kit or whatever. And I remember going into the shower and coming out with my stick mic and pretending to do my own The Price is Right. And so at that young age, I identified I want to be that person that's making people happy and that is guiding things along. Now, I just said that Bob Barker's job is I hope I didn't insinuate that I think that Bob Barker's job is easy, because I know that's not true. But just to boil it down to it, the simplest, like the essence of what Bob Barker is, I was like, that's something that's what I want to be. And as I got older and learned a little bit more about media, and, I crossed some things off the list, I kind of localized it and ended up being the easiest path I could find that kind of checked all the boxes as far as what I enjoyed was going into radio and being a radio personality.
So you got your start, obviously beyond your shower time performances, at Hope. Was it Hope Radio?
Yes, that is true. Yeah, good memory. I interned there. I had to get an internship. I had to get 2 internships for college. Ideally, it would be one either at the end of your junior year, and then another one at the end of your senior year, or you can bookend them being all 1 year, senior year. The one at the end of my junior year didn't work out, so I was kind of up against it. I had to make sure, because you can't graduate unless you have both of those internships done. So I needed to make sure I got an internship. And my family used to go to a church that was near us, and the pastor church. They remember that the pastor of the church was working on starting a small radio station, and we had since not been going to the church, but they reminded me of that. Said you should see what happened, because he knows you. He would probably let you intern. And then at the job I had, I was working at CVS in the pharmacy, and another guy that was just a regular customer was talking to me about college. He was like, yeah, I go to this church. The pastor has a radio station. They're always looking for help. So I went in and I interned. I loved it. I had a great time. It was a small company. I got an opportunity to do a lot of different things and kind of learn what is a job in radio from the ground up, all the aspects of it, from promotional, doing events, to some engineering, of course, to doing production and on-air stuff. And I ended up entering there both times, and they hired me as soon as I graduated.
Wow. So was Hope Radio like this like a low power FM station, or was it like a legitimate commercial?
They actually were a legitimate commercial station, commercially licensed station. They broadcast on 107.1, which is WLIR. Someone that's a little bit older on Long Island will remember those call letters. That was a legacy radio station for years. They got the call letter, so we broadcast on that, and we had a string. It actually was a pretty impressive radio network when you think about it. They had a string of what are called translators, which aren't licensed to broadcast unique programming, but they're allowed to simulcast and kind of pick up a licensed signal. There are special FCC rules in the what makes a translator illegal, but we had a series of translators to reach from the Twin Forks of Long Island, the far end of Long Island, and we reached all the way to kind of the Nassau County border through a series of different frequencies. Actually, we reached into Nassau County. Actually, there was one in Plainview, which is crazy.
So like it would be like 107.1 was like the main frequency, and then
Yeah.
you could go to like 95.2 on another. Wow, that's
That was
crazy.
almost
So
actually one of them. It was 107.1. Oh God, there was one that was 96.9, which is kind of ironic. Once we go further in the interview, you'll learn why. 107.1 is actually a little interesting too. The fact that I started on 107.1 and 96.9. There was also 94.7. There was 104.5. There was a bunch of them. And each of them, now look, the translators, they weren't low power translators, I don't think, but they didn't reach very far, which is why we had a bunch of them. And they just kind of, it was like a chain that worked its way across the island. And that's what we would say.
So
The
it's
legal
almost like
ID was like a 60-second thing with all these different frequencies and towns. It was kind of wild.
it's almost like the ham radio repeaters.
Yeah, exactly. That's the premise. They're some people call them repeaters. I don't know what the most technical term of it is. They told me they were translators, and I would be talking to engineers, and they would call them repeaters. So I think that's the idea.
Yeah, if it's one thing that I think we could all agree on in the radio world is that we all have different terms for the same thing, and it often gets pretty confusing. When I talk to ham guys, CB guys, and stuff like that, they all have like these weird terms.
There's jargon, radio jargon.
Oh God, yeah. And to mention your point about the 107.1 and 96.9 reference you made, let's get to that right now. So 101.7 is WBEA, or The Beach. So what sets The Beach apart from other commercial stations?
All right. Well, The Beach is very interesting. We're a top 40 radio station. We play contemporary hits radio, which if you're from Long Island, the landscape of contemporary hits radio is pretty crowded and includes 3 legacy stations on different tiers. I have a lot of respect I know people that work at all of them. So we're in a crowded market as far as contemporary hits radio. The first in Connecticut is KC 101, 101.3. That station has been around for decades. It's a legacy station. I've had a little communication with the program director. He seems like a really cool guy. They have great ideas, but you can hear that station through a lot of our listening area. We also have 106.1 BLI, which is like a Long Island institution. Everybody knows BLI. I grew up listening to the BLI morning show on my bus ride to school. I know the morning show personality now. We've talked, and we actually had a connection through college. I went to school with his now wife. So I know him. I'm friendly with him, and he does a great job. And I see him as like the next generation. I see kids listening on their school bus to him, which I think is kind of wild. And then you have Z100 in the city, which you can hear through a lot of our listening area too. And all of us play with the hits. So if you want to hear Post Malone, we're in the mix of all these other stations that for all these various reasons also play Post Malone. So the angle that we've taken, and of course there's things that my program director has done to tweak the music to specific tastes and to try to find our lane, whatever that might be, and that kind of changes over time. But one thing that we focused on as a group for our brand would be to be super hyper local and super connected to these individual towns, particularly on the east end of Long Island, where the other stations just geographically tend not to be as focused on, because they have Z100 has Manhattan to focus on. So we say, what can we do for Cinema Riches, or what can we do for Wading River, or Riverhead, and these towns on the east end of Long Island, Springs and Quogue and Aquabog on the north fork. What can we do? Cutshaw. What can we do? Mattatuck. I can keep rattling off strange sounding names to someone that's not from Long Island. But what can we do to literally be invested and involved in those communities, almost positioning ourselves as the small local station, but with the big sound. And that's, I hope that if Harry's listening, I hope I did it justice, but that's kind of the vision, was to be involved and connected to the community. We do a lot of things with charitable organizations that are super local. And that's kind of been our approach. All for the East End. Absolutely. AFTY's a big one. We've worked with Stepping Stone Support. I consider myself friends with the person who's founded this organization, Stepping Stone Support. Case Angels, another organization on the North Fork of Long Island, I've done tons of work with. I call the people that founded that organization. So groups like that, we try to be really involved with those type of things, so that, on top of playing your favorite songs, hit music, contemporary hits radio, we're also super involved with your community and some of the things that matter to you.
I was thinking about that after the last AFTY event I did with the drive-in, and I was like, I used to think like, why are we doing this? Like, what does this have to necessarily do with like radio or whatever? And then it kind of hit me like as I was researching, community radio and pirates and stuff like that. And I was just like, because that's the next big project I'm working on is like a history of pirate radio, and then community radio. And I was like, you know what? They're trying to stick to that community ethos where it's like we serve the community, not just playing music, but we play music that fits the community, and we're also going to give you help. Like when I was at the drive-in, I was actually directing traffic, and I'm like, what's the point of this? And then I realized, oh, it's to actually help the community. Like this is supposed to be like community radio.
Yeah, we're here with you,
and
that's how we draw people in. That's how we, that's our identity.
That's what and I really like that. I think that's something that a lot of radio misses, and that's a key point of media democracy, which is something that I'm really passionate about because radio used to be really community based, and really anyone could get involved with it. And nowadays it's so corporatized, with iHeartMedia and NPR especially killing the radio democracy movement in the early 2000s. It's really refreshing now to actually like think like, wow, I was a part of something that was kind of fighting back against it. Like, yes, we're a commercial station, we got to make a profit, but 1017, 92.9, and what was the other way? Was it
102.5?
Was the
WBAZ,
102.5? Yeah, it's it's to still keep that community respect. So I have a lot of respect for the mission statement of the company in trying to keep
absolutely. That's something that we focus on. Now, I do want to say that it's not, we don't necessarily view it as fighting back against a corporation or against, because like I said, I have friends that work for some of the biggest corporations in the world, and there's a lot of things that they do that are positive. But there is space for local radio, and that's our goal is to, if there's a niche that we can fill, there's an avenue that a lane that we can place ourselves in, we'd be happy to place ourselves as serving the local community, but with a sound that is as big and as polished as the biggest of corporate radio stations. We don't want to sound super small. We want to sound big, but we also want to be at your event. We want to be at the local things that matter.
It's a perfect medium.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And speaking of, sounding big, a lot of these corporations have like podcasts. Like NPR has their own like daily podcast. The Times has the daily. Is Long Island Radio? Are you guys considering making like a podcast similar to that, or are you guys sticking to the true definition of radio?
Well, the thing, I got two answers to that question. The first answer is our goal is to make everything that we create accessible digitally. And we already have things that are considered, that you could consider podcasts and things that kind of toe the line as far as being digital. What is it, digital or is it for the radio? We try to make everything for both. So for 1017 The Beach, we've had the 1017 project. We've been doing that for the past couple of years. And at its core, it is a podcast series. It's an interview series that we do with different community leaders and organizations that are having a positive impact. On EHM, there's several interview series and several things that we do that might not necessarily be, we might not say it's the blank, blank, blank podcast, but in theory, the way you consume it is on our website and on our social, outside of literally listening to the radio. So that's my first answer. Yeah, we do have tons of digital content. We're looking at building that up as much as possible. And the other answer is I personally, and I believe the company that I'm with believes this too, that the idea of what radio is growing and is changing. And if you think about what when people listen to Spotify, a lot of times they're looking at playlists that are pre-curated and pre-designed, and they're looking at, some services offer actual radio stations. As a matter of fact, Apple Music now has radio stations, in theory. So people consume what it means for it to be radio versus streaming versus a podcast, even versus something that you're posting on Instagram and your IGTV or Facebook Live. The the lines are being blurred as far as what is, well, this is radio and this is not radio. And I think a smart radio company, whether it be the one I work for or iHeartMedia, there's a reason why they are working to make sure that they have digital content, because it's not going to matter to someone. It's getting close to that point now. People aren't going to necessarily like, I would like to tune into the radio station on the frequency. People versus I want to be able to tap on my phone to find this. People just want the content that they enjoy, and they want to find the content that works for them. And it's our job to make the content that we make as easy for someone to consume as possible. So I don't know. That's kind of a meandering answer to the question. Maybe I answered more questions than the one you asked. But yes, we are trying to create more digital content, and I think that is important, whatever you're doing in radio, to kind of build what you're doing to be consumed as many ways as possible, whether that be a straight up podcast, straight up just on the air on traditional terrestrial radio, or somewhere in between.
So I'm assuming that's how you guys like are bringing in new listeners and also maintaining your target audience, which I believe is 18 to 25-year-old women.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Core target. It would be 18 to 25. The format does stretch a little older at times, and of course, we're not going to say no to it's stretching in either direction. The more people that we can get to listen would be great. But yeah, that core audience, it is that 20-something-year-old female for the top 40 station. To answer your question, how do we gain new listeners? It's finding them where they are and inviting them to what we do. That includes being at an event like AFTI. If no one knows we exist, they'll never listen. So how do we get people to know that we exist and present them with the option of listening? It would be appearing at a local community event. It'd be appearing at a big community event. It would be posting content on social. It would be, all creating content for digital on our website, content that people want to hear. And going directly to radio would be, my job as an on-air personality to make sure that I'm keeping forward momentum, make sure I'm engaging with the audience and coming up with content during my breaks, during my show, that would, once someone tunes in, would cause them to continue to listen even longer, and that begets more listeners too.
And I'm assuming that also plays into like the commercials you produce as well. Like, how do you market a product to where it's entertainment instead of advertising?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's the other side of my job that I do. I'm the production director. So my goal with making commercials is to try to use whatever I can, whether it be writing good copy, getting the right voiceover, picking the right music, sound effects, whatever I can do to make the commercial sound as compelling as possible, so that it's very easy for someone listening to find out who this business is, what they do, and how to reach them as simply as possible, and to grab their attention. And also create it with respect to what station it's on, because you have 3 stations that are very different. So the type of music or the type of voice or the type of effects or even the copy, the approach we might take on something for the top 40 station is probably going to be completely opposite to what we do on like the AAA station. Or maybe sometimes it's exactly the same. But trying to figure out how to market each product, each client that I have, as well as in the grand scheme of things, keep it in line with what we're doing as a station.
So like when you're talking about marketability and like the success of that, like how do you determine if it is successful? Do you often go off of social media? Do you go off of the client's response to the advertisement? How do you know if something is truly effective?
Like just talking about commercials or in general?
Yeah.
Commercials?
Commercials. Yeah.
All right. Honestly, if the client is happy, at the end of the day, if the client is happy, that's how we know that we're doing a good job, because the client won't be happy if they're not getting a return on their investment that they're looking for. The client won't be happy if it's making people not buy their product. The client won't be happy if they don't like the way the commercial sounds, or they don't like what we're marketing or what we're saying in the commercial. So if the client is happy, that's the easiest way to know that you've checked. That's the easiest way for you to know that you've checked as many of those boxes as possible. There are occasions where the client is happy with the commercial and you might disagree with whether the commercial is effective or not. But at the end of the day, the customer is always right. You fight the good fight and you try to get them where you think it would be most effective for them. But usually, by and large, if the client is happy, that probably means it's going as well as it can.
That's almost like what we did with the Riverhead Tool Company, where we were actually on the scene advertising and promoting their event, which was a unique way of advertising, I have to say. A whole day of just live broadcast, as well as, and just making it feel like it was an event, which it really ended up turning out to be. I mean, they had a whole race car there. They had a bunch of tools and demonstrations. I think that was cool. And the one we did for the ski lodge in what was it, Vermont? I think.
I don't know if we made it.
I
don't think did an appearance there, but we did give away. I remember giving away. We have a relationship with one of the mountains up there, and we do give away some lift passes and different packages, vacation packages. Yeah, that's kind of cool. That's over the winter and spring we do that.
It's just nice to see like that there's a diversity in producing content while still making it marketable and entertaining at the same time, and it fit, within our station's ethics, not ethics, culture, being
absolutely.
very communal based.
Yeah,
Even
I mean,
the copy you wrote.
People love winning things, so that's something. Go back to one of the questions you asked: how do you gain more listeners? Give them things to win. Give them as many reasons to listen as possible. Good music, nice personalities that are engaging, that they enjoy. Being at fun events and connecting with the community in different ways, where they feel like you're a part of the community, and give them things to win. So they can win a ski trip. I feel like people enjoy things like that.
Or the time we gave out free Mets tickets.
Oh my goodness!
5.
I remember that. Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah. Those are big tickets.
Splash.
Splish Splash tickets. Split Splash is always that's like a staple for us. Always have Split Splash tickets and Long Island Aquarium passes.
So to divest a little bit, or divert rather, what is the process of creating a live show for a commercial station?
A live show for a commercial station. Well, the answer to that really depends on what format you're talking about. I can speak to my experience doing a top 40 show on a top 40 station, and the approach is, for me at least, it's at its core is understanding who you're talking to and what they're interested in, and how you can authentically connect with them about something. So for me, I prep different topics, whether it be something like celebrities, something that's happening with celebrities, celebrity gossip, and things like that. What the artists that are making the music they're listening to, what they're doing. Playing clips of interviews that they've done with our station, to kind of draw context for what this artist was thinking about when they created this song that they enjoy listening to. Coming up with topics that engage listeners to interact with us. So phone topics, we call them phoners and things like that, trivia questions, little things like that just add a little bit to the experience of hearing the music. Just little tastes of different things like that. So that's how I approach a live show for a top 40 audience. I guess particularly for me, live show would be to make sure that I'm prepared and that I have everything lined up, because the worst thing that I can do in my format is to talk too much, take too much time, and to drag down momentum or to take away for momentum. If we're stuck in neutral on a top 40 station because, I'm telling a joke or, talking to a caller about something for, X amount of time, then that's not good. We want to make sure we're flying. Momentum is still moving forward as much as possible. So that involves prep and making sure that when I open the mic, I'm prepared to say what I'm going to say and fly to the next song as efficiently as possible. But that's my experience in my particular format. Doing a live show for, a talk format or a news format or even other music format there are things that are similar. I think you always want to have forward momentum, but there are different things that someone else doing something different would, I wouldn't be able to necessarily know how they might approach that.
Well, for the top 40, amount of time you'd speak at a top 40, I've seen you do an average of 15 to 30 seconds of speaking. But
that seems fair.
The most you could probably go would be 120 seconds if you had a caller.
I would agree. If you have all right. So for me, you have speed breaks, you have long breaks. And for me, the length of a long break is as long as the content is compelling and drives momentum forward. I agree with you. I feel like 120 seconds, you're probably, especially I'm doing afternoon drive. The rules are a little bit different if you're doing like a morning show. You have a little bit more time. But the rule still applies.
How so?
As morning shows tend to have a little bit more talk than like an afternoon drive show. Traditionally, afternoon drive shows and the other day parts tend to be more music driven than like a morning show where you have more bits. But even in a morning show where you have more bits, you might have more technical talk time and more leeway to do things. It can only last as long as it's compelling. So while a morning show, you might have a 4 or 5 minute break about something. And an afternoon show that, similar content might be more like 2 minutes. It's only as good as it's still compelling and moving things forward. If it stalls out,
So
you gotta cut to the next thing, throw to the next song.
So why is it going back to what you said about the mornings? Why is it longer talk times in the morning as opposed to afternoon?
That's interesting. I mean, I would imagine it comes down to research, years of research that determine that someone listening in the morning is more inclined to continue to listen to a bigger show that has more bits and longer talk content. Versus afternoon, that might be about getting you home a little faster, more music than stopping to talk. But there's always exceptions to the rules. Like out here on Long Island, I hear city stations, some of the bigger personalities that are on during afternoon drive are do longer talk breaks and have more content than I do for my show. And I think it comes down to what the station kind of feels like, what the research shows, what the listeners tend to prefer. But I think the general rule of thumb is that your morning shows usually have a little bit more talk time in CHR than the other day parts. Night shows too can have tend to have a little bit more talk time. That's after, depending on when you want to start at 6, 7, or 8 o'clock at night. Those shows tend to have a little bit more content than the work day portion. The middays, that's like 10 to 3, and then you drive home 3-ish to 7.
I feel like that's because people are so tired in the morning or at night that they're just more willing to listen to someone talk because it kind of fits the mood of your brain function.
That could be it, and it's giving you a little social interaction first thing in the morning, and also I think you go back to kind of like, it doesn't really matter so much now, but in the beginning or earlier years ago on radio, it was very important to tell you what the weather was like in the morning, tell you what the news was like in the morning, and things like that, as opposed to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you already knew what happened. You already lived your whole day. But 6:30 in the morning, it's good to have the guy, the announcer on your favorite station, tell you, time check, weather check, and news stories and things like that. I feel like it's changed more recently. We don't spend as much time on those things, but that could have established kind of the precedent of having a little more talk in the morning. But I'll admit that I don't know necessarily the answer. My best answer would be is based upon research that says that's what listeners prefer.
Right. So what do you think, is there any, like, what do commercial stations have over public stations?
Nothing. I think they're different. I wouldn't pit them against each other, honestly.
I agree.
I think commercial stations serve, it just comes down to how they're choosing to earn money. Commercial stations earn money commercially. They earn money through advertisers directly, spending money with them and sponsors. A non-commercial station or a public station has listener support and underwriting from corporations. I think that has caused, the way you earn money, probably it does play into your decisions as far as what formats, how you approach the actual programming of your station. But in all, I think they both serve purposes, and I don't know if there's anything. There are tons of differences, but I don't know if there's anything that I would say commercial radio has that is something that non-commercial radio or public radio doesn't have, or vice versa. It's just different.
I agree with you there. I feel like I like both either way, because there's just there's certain cultures from each. I'm more biased towards public radio because, like, I produce for a college station, and that's how I structure my podcast. But, like, that's just what I'm familiar with. But I also like the commercial stations because y'all are more upbeat. And it's a different type of entertainment that's welcome, and I think both have their inherent advantages. And honestly, I wouldn't mind if a station was half public and half commercial. That was somehow legal.
It's interesting,
But another thing I wanted to ask you was when you started doing radio every day, like it was demystified, everything was just on the table. What surprised you?
Ooh, good question. What surprised me most? Um, Early on, it was how many things go into you hearing one thing on the radio. How many things, how many people, or if it's just one person, how many things they have to do just to have one song played at one time. It's a whole chain of events that lead to it. And nothing on radio ever is, well, there's a ton of things that happen by accident, but in a perfect world, everything is by design. There was someone who thought through the entire process as far as the programming of a station. You know, when you hear, for me, top 40, you hear a song on a top 40 station play at 3:43, it was designed for that song to play at that place because it was the best possible song to place there. So how deliberate it is, and how many people kind of make it work. You hear a radio station, look, I wanted to be in radio. You grow up, you just think it's the guy singing in the room playing his songs. There is that, but there's a whole chain of events that go into, making it possible. Just playing one song, just one guy doing one talk break. How many people are in support of that and involved with that, from the engineering to the promotions department, the programming department, traffic department, scheduling the commercials. That's probably what surprised me most, that like, man, just playing some music takes all of this. And it does. It takes a lot of, it takes many things occurring and more thought that you might think.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially the business side of the office. When I first worked for you guys, I was shocked. There was a whole half of the office that was just like, how do we make the station money?
Yeah, sales department,
and that's like our only role.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's deconstruct the top 40 a little bit. Let's from step one to the final step. Like, just say it's a random Tuesday. Right. How do you work on the whole day? How does the whole day go from like sales all the way to you speaking on that microphone? Ooh. Like what?
Well, it's going to be a long answer. In general, the sales team is they have packages, and they have one sheeters that describe different things that the station is doing that are available to be sold. There's promotional events and giveaways and contests. There's our features and our shows, so our morning show, the different features that we do on a daily basis. And then they just have the station in general, just the format of the station and the culture of the station that might align demographically with who you might be selling to. Their job is to go out and try to get these things sold. My program director is working on crafting music logs and discovering music and figuring out which songs should play where, how to categorize them, how many songs should play how many times. And going through, there's as much science as there is art to him crafting a daily music log and determining what songs are we playing in general and how we're rotating all of those songs. Then you got me in the production department, making sure that the imaging is produced and it's in there and it's ready to play. The logs have all things that are ready to go, that the songs in there are in there correctly, and making sure that the commercials are produced to the client's liking and the right commercials always playing. Our traffic department is working on scheduling everybody's commercials to make sure that they're scheduled properly and each client gets the amount of commercials in the time slots that they're hoping for. And then you go back to me as the on-air jock. I'm there presenting the final product. I'm there to help you enjoy the music, keep things moving, keeping positive and forward momentum, telling you as the host what we're doing and where we're going to be and what's going on, and engaging with you in any way that I can that keeps forward momentum. So that's kind of in a nutshell how all the different departments kind of work, and what their objectives are on like the average Tuesday. The flow of events is probably a salesperson sells a spot to a client, it gets produced, and then it gets scheduled into a log. The program director crafts a music log, combines it with those scheduled commercials to make our 24-hour playlist. That gets imported into our automation system, and then the jock goes in and delivers the shows that day. It's a crazy answer, but that's a big question. It takes a lot. Go back to the last question. It takes a lot to get everything off the ground.
That's what I was hoping for. I was hoping for a big answer. When especially like with automation, like all this stuff happens within a 24-hour
every
cycle.
Single day. Yeah,
a sale gets executed, tell you how to make it, send it to sales. Sales like good, then you put it into automation, and then automation is a two-computer, maybe even I think it's even a three-computer process where you have to keep dragging things into different files and different computers, and then it finally gets uploaded.
Yeah, automation is an incredible thing. At its simplest, it's just a thing that plays a continuous playlist, and we're just constantly updating the library to make sure that the content that we're looking for is playing. But it could, I mean, what is automation? It could be just one computer, or it could be, in the case of us, we have a server and we have several computers that everyone has access to, including the on-air machines that are actually playing the product. So it can be a complex computer system or a simple, a guy on a laptop. You could download something that is essentially technically an automation system and work it all from your laptop.
Especially, it's especially not crunching, well, pressing actually. When you have to rely on a syndicated show such as like the Zach Sang show,
absolutely,
where you now it's not even just relying on you guys, it's relying on their team to execute the same thing that you guys have to go through, so they could send it to you and then it gets aired at the right time. And
that's true. Yeah, syndicated programs are something. It's another wrinkle. There's a ton. I mean, there's tons of ways to deliver content now. I mean, in the past, you probably were dealing with mostly satellites. Now you have satellite receivers, but you also have high-speed internet connections where they can deliver it live. We also have tons of delivery systems where they can literally record their break essentially live, and it'll be transported to our station, to air 3 minutes in the future. We have shows that do. We have a couple syndicated shows on the stations, and everyone does it a little bit differently to deliver their content.
So how does syndication work? Like, what's the step-by-step? I want a step-by-step of how you get a syndicated show, how it's executed, how it gets aired, and how it's received.
That's a question for someone that's way more – you need a syndicator to answer that question, really. But in general, a show that is a good show that's testing well, that it's in a company that has the ability to present it to multiple markets, or even just a person who's willing to present it to multiple markets and can deliver to multiple markets and has success in multiple markets, it kind of begets more and more success. So if you have a proven show somewhere, you're providing content that's really good, you pitch it, whether it be through you or through your company, you can pitch it to other similar markets. And you have to figure out how to get them the content. And that's technical. You could, however you choose to do it. A bigger company, they have satellite and high-speed internet networks where they can deliver content to you automatically. Some people will record it and send it to you. It's a weekly show. So how does syndication work? God, that is a massive question. You could do a whole podcast about syndication, and someone just wrote a book actually about how to get yourself syndicated. So I didn't do it justice. It is something that is sort of within the radio industry for jocks and people, is something that a lot of people strive for, to be syndicated. But that is a huge question. What is syndication? The simple answer is a show that is successful in one area that has found the means to then present themselves and broadcast in multiple areas. And there's tons of ways for that to start and tons of ways for that to happen.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely should make a
Absolutely. Syndication is really fascinating. And it's something that some people have strong feelings on. Some people feel like it's killing local shows and local radio. What I fall back on all the time is, look, if you're a local station, you should find a way to bring the best content as possible to your listeners. And at the end of the day, if the guy is based out of Mars, but the content is good and it works for your specific listeners in your area, there's no reason not to bring him in. And also find ways to give people, and I guess at the end of the day, the question is, well, keeping people's jobs and making sure that local people have work. Find a balance within your company to make sure that's possible. I think my companies have done a pretty good job of having local talent versus national talent. And hopefully I'm able to execute, I'm able to execute well enough so that, I fit in with the big guns that we air. That's the prayer every day.
I think you do a pretty good job. I thoroughly enjoy your show, and seeing you produce it. It's, if you didn't tell me you had syndicated shows, I wouldn't know, because they all you guys all kind of fit into the general vibe that they get.
Yeah.
Another question, this one involves social media, right? So when you're promoting your show, I see you use an array of social media. Right. What social media do you see the most interactions with for 1017 The Beach?
Probably Instagram. with a close runner-up being Twitter, because fan
Really?
armies are on Twitter a lot. So if you're going to post something about an artist, you'll probably get a lot of traction on Twitter. But Instagram, we found like it's kind of like a chicken or the egg type question. Do we have a lot of interaction on Twitter? I'm sorry, on Instagram, because we post more often on Instagram and we engage with people more often on Instagram, or are the people we're looking for more likely to be using Instagram? The answer is probably somewhere in the middle. Um, and so I feel like that's probably the long and short of my answer. We have a lot of Instagram and Twitter are probably the two forms of social media that we see the most positive feedback for, but we're also putting things into it to get that positive feedback. Each social media, just like each format of a station, each particular social media channel, you're reaching a slightly different person at a slightly different place. So they're all important in different ways, but Twitter and Instagram seem to be the two that hit the most for us.
It surprises me that you said Twitter because I would have thought the answer would have been Instagram or Facebook, because I've never really seen a radio station find success with Twitter. You only usually see it with Instagram, Facebook sometimes, or definitely their website. So like when you use Twitter, what's the typical, like, say you post something about Guildhall, like an artist that performs at Guildhall, right? And for those of you that don't know what Guildhall is, it's a an upscale performance venue for I don't even know how to describe those artists, but they're really good, and they had like one of the world's best guitar players there like 2 years ago. And so when you tweet about that, like how many interactions do you get? Why do you think you get those interactions? And like, what do you think the age range
Well,
is?
that's an interesting question because that wouldn't necessarily be the top 40 station. That scenario, that would probably be our AAA station, EHM. And we actually have a pretty healthy following on Twitter. And I think it goes back to the first thing, it's what you put into it. So for years, EHM has had a presence on Facebook, probably predominantly. We have a pretty impressive Facebook following, and an active Facebook following. There's a lot of people that you post something, they'll engage, which is kind of tough sometimes. And on Twitter, it translates to Twitter. There's a lot of people that post about their artists and people on Twitter. So yeah, we get a lot of it. For that station, we get a lot of engagement posting about something like that on Twitter, because we've developed and cultivated a following of listeners on Twitter. For Beach, it probably wouldn't be that. It would be us highlighting an artist or sharing an interview with an artist. Because fan armies, fan armies are huge on Twitter. You look at a group like BTS. Yeah, you look at a group like BTS. Not all their success, but a huge amount of their success comes out of how committed and how monolithic, how organized their fans are. So if there's somebody you post about BTS, use the right hashtags, it's going to have an effect.
Yeah, no, I agree. Especially what's interesting about the BTS K-pop stans is that they were so successful in taking over hashtags used by like white supremacists and Trump supporters. And they were actually very essential in the online war.
It's really funny.
In support of Black Lives Matter. Yeah, it was hysterical. I was like, I gave anime kids and K-pop stans a lot of I don't want to curse, but like, you know what I mean. A lot of S, and they really pulled through, and it was so interesting to see how social media is so powerful to this day that it could make or break you, and it has its own subcultures.
Absolutely.
And this question is a really interesting one that I want you to ponder. Do you think that 1017 or WEHM could create its own social media culture and kind of fan army of its own, or do you think radio stations are not necessarily able to do that?
Oh, absolutely. I think they can. I think anyone can do that. Now, I saying anyone can do that doesn't mean it's easy. It's very difficult to create, someone with the you create something like the BTS Army. I said they were huge. Almost like I refer to the BTS Army almost like Iron Man, like one giant superhero of a fan group that just moves in sequence with each other, and they make sure that the BTS songs and BTS gets their respect. But yeah, I mean, that's what your goal is. If you're a social media influencer, you want to gather people who are fans of you and your content. And that goes for someone that's a radio station or anything you want to market. It's important to be on social media and develop people that are fans of you. I've noticed that outside of companies, a lot of times it's the personality themselves that end up being kind of the forefront. And that's the way it works on the air too. No one's cheering over the imaging, or the legal ID, but people, I don't know if anybody's cheering for the jock either, but in theory, the jock is what drives things forward and makes that connection probably more than the identity of the station. And the jock's job is to push forward and present the identity of the station. So I do notice it's a little bit easier for, say, Jeff Smith, the morning show host of blank, blank, blank radio, to have a big, at Jeff Smith radio, handle on social and have a lot of followers that engage with him. Maybe a little bit easier than, W blank, 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 the station that he works for, but they also work hand in hand because he can kind of cross promote. And honestly, the direct answer to the question, EHM, I do feel like they legitimately have a real fan base on social media, on Facebook and on Twitter. I mean, no one can compete with the BTS Army or any of the fan armies. You name them. Every prominent artist that's come out over the past 5-6 years has their own fan army, a hashtag fan army, which is crazy to me. But yeah, you can develop a following. I don't know if you could create a BTS army for yourself. If you're a radio station, a person, whoever, you're doing great. But that should be the goal, to create a community of people that support you and that you can interact with on social. And that's the purpose of radio in general. That's what my goal is when I do talk breaks in the afternoon, to develop a community of people, not necessarily fans of me, like, God, Justin's so amazing. I don't really care about it. But to create a community of people, like-minded people, and we're working together. And we engage with each other. Working together, that's a little community, but we engage with each other and interact, and we have fun. I'm the host of a big party every afternoon.
That's a good way to look at it. Hosting a giant party, and that's why I think it was really important. When I would run around with the social media, at those the Live on Fives or whatever, or if you would do a live or whatever. I mean, like, that's really important. Is that you create content outside of your main medium.
Yeah.
And
100%.
that's something I'm trying to do with my podcast is like going live or whatever. The issue with going live is staring at the screen with one person.
That's the issue for everyone. You got to be careful. It's not a good look. But I will say this. You'll never reach the point of going live and having a billion people if you don't start with that one person. Because at the end of the day, now look, I understand that it's a little humbling to go live and nobody joins. We've all had that feeling. But the point will be the content. Are you going live for a good reason? Do you have something to say? And are you providing content on some level to the people that follow you? If you keep providing good content and you keep managing it the right way, you'll get to the point where it's not just one person joining. You'll have as many people as you want to join. And you'll have the quality people joining, people that really care about what you're doing.
Exactly. And that's I think the issue with a lot of people is that they get frustrated because they don't refine their content. They do I remember I had a friend who wanted to do I can't remember their name, but she wanted to do a live show with me on her Instagram, and she ended up like canceling it right away cuz only like 2 people showed up. And I was like, you gotta not give up. You gotta like work through that. If you have something prepared, if you're just like going live and being like, "Yo, what's up?" and you're just like this in the camera for 20 minutes, like no one wants to show up. Like, that's just not.
No. Look, and there's also a difference between going live to just reach your friends. Like, I think we've learned that over the pandemic that when no one was around each other. There's one thing to go live without a purpose, and that's okay too. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, every time you go live, you've got to have a prepared show, and you've got to be a radio personality and a social media influencer to go live, and you've got to have it. No, you could just go live just to go live. But if your goal is to if it's part of you want to do a show live or you want to do a live podcast, I understand why you might be worried about having one person show up. But you got to just push past it and keep keep creating good content.
Oh yeah, no, I meant in that sense. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
like I've gone live just to see what happens. Like, don't get me wrong, but like if you have a specific goal, like that's part of the reason I've never done a live show. Because what I used to do is like I used to have like really bad like it's still pretty bad, but like I would, I would like do like in the microphone, and now I'm gonna have to edit that out or lower it, but. Basically, it would ruin my audio, so I would always cut it out. And to have continuity, I just would never do live.
I understand.
But it's almost like who cares if you do that, because that's part of you as a personality. Like people are still listening.
Yes.
So I guess like this is where I get into my preachy mode and say, don't worry about what you sound like. Just say your message.
Absolutely. That's not even preachy.
Yeah.
That's true. And if you want to bring it back to radio, I would say that one thing that we've learned in radio the past however many years is that the best personalities, and I think this is true for social media too, as far as being a social media influencer, because in theory, radio personalities, I think, have a lot in common with social media influencers. I like to say that social media influencers, radio personalities were the original social media influencers. Authenticity, being yourself, sounding like you and being you is the most important thing. People can tell if you're putting on a show or if you're phony, and it's not real. People like knowing and engaging with someone that's a real person. So your biggest strength, and that's part of the art of being a personality, especially on radio or social media influencers, finding what's true about you, and being vulnerable and presenting that to your audience in a way that makes sense for them. So like me going on the Top 40 show and crying about something is probably not going to make that much sense. Don't want to see some guy cry after a Taylor Swift song. But you know, being vulnerable and being open about myself, and sharing my thoughts and my opinion, being Justin, so that you listen to, hey, that sounds like a guy I like. I want to sit at the bar next to that guy. You know, and that's the most important thing you can do. You could translate that, you know, into a more serious topic. I feel like you're engaged with more serious discussions. But that's, if I were to give advice to anybody, it would be to be yourself and to be true to you. Radio voices, don't worry about a radio voice. Just sound like you and be the best you as you can be.
Yeah, no, that's, you know, that's something that I kind of learned too, and I realized that also through people commenting about social media influencers, and it's like, oh well, they're all fake and they're just showing their body off or whatever, and it's like, well, you know, in some cases, you know, for certain influencers, that's the case where it's superficial and you're just a walking advertisement. But people still like that. That's the issue, is that there's a market for that superficiality. Some people like that superficial stuff. That's not my cup of tea. I'm more of I'm going to, like, I slept in this hoodie. Like,
I didn't sleep in my shirt. This is a clean shirt.
Dude, that's flex.
You like it?
That
clean
is a
shirt?
flex. Yeah, no, not just that
Memorex?
it's clean, like just the style, like what you're wearing. That's flex. I would totally rock that to a party.
I'm a weird guy. I like wearing like retro, like weird stuff. So this is Memorex. I feel like people don't even know what Memorex is, but I am old enough to.
I don't even know
Memorex.
what it is.
Oh man, they were a very important brand. They used to make blank CDs, blank tapes. If you go back far enough. And it was so you can record things. So I honestly, part of my early goings in radio was recording songs I liked on the radio. Sometimes on a Memorex. I feel like I got other brands. You went to CVS and whatever was on sale, but Memorex was that was the standard. They had a slogan. I think is it real or is it Memorex? Because you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between that real performance or the recording on a Memorex cassette. Now that's before my time. I'm not gonna make myself that old. The top 40 host is 70 years old, but no, that's this type of nonsense. T-shirts I like to wear.
No. I'm gonna make you not feel as old, because I probably have, in case there's any younger listeners out there, my friends are listening with their kids.
Wow,
oh my God.
really?
People, yeah, like it's kind of scary how people I graduated with that might listen to this also have kids. It's just
that's crazy, man. Oh my God.
Yeah,
I don't have kids,
but yeah, dude, I knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
Not never, but
yeah,
like
you gotta double check, see if you have kids. Knock on wood. I don't know what I know of.
Who knows? But like, just whatever. But anyway, like, not to make you feel dated, but I'm also gonna date myself. I used to record episodes of SpongeBob in 4th grade on my LG chocolate.
Wow. Look at that.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I am totally gonna date myself. So you
LG
don't have to worry about it. It was so weird because I work.
I already had a 401k probably when you were doing that. I didn't.
Oh
I didn't.
God.
It's not true. No, I'm deliberately dating myself.
Yeah, what the hell, man? But I would sign kids up at the gym I work at, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I was born in 2004," and they're there with their parents, and I'm just like, "Stop."
2000 and what?
Stop. It's 2004. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
"Stop,
yeah.
dude. That's too much."
Wow.
But it's. And that's the thing with media technology too, is that it's changed and it's affected our field. It's affected radio.
The landscape's always moving.
With the
It's always moving. The landscape's always changing.
Oh yeah, and like online radio was before podcast, like with Shoutcast and Icecast, and people would do that. That was their way of moving beyond radio piracy after 2000, because low power FM basically got shot in the foot in 2012. You only had a 30-day window to apply for a low power license, and it was all bought up by the conglomerates and churches anyway. So people said, I either pirate or there's this cool thing called the internet and Shoutcast. And then we saw that, and then we saw podcasts blow up in the last 5 years because people realized it's cheap to get equipment. Like this setup, like if you bought a Focusrite, I made the mistake of buying a Zoom. You don't really need a Zoom, but if you buy a Focusrite thing, and then even if you record into Audacity, your total bill is going to be like $3-something because you have to pay for an RSS feed.
Not bad at all.
You save a couple. No, not at all. You save for a couple of months, you could start your own podcast, and it's contributing to the spirit of community radio and serving people with your own voice. And that's what I like about radio, is that even if it is like heavily corporatized and the main goal is profit, you're still using your own voice to a degree, and that spirit has never truly left radio. Which is why I still have a terrestrial radio, and I still flick it on, even if it's up here we have Town Square Media. And, even though, like, the talk on Town Square isn't my cup of tea, it's still talk. It's still serving the local community, absolutely. And it's still things people like. So that's why, I have respect for radio a lot more than, other mediums.
Radio is very interesting, but what is radio? To me, delivering content for your ears. So what is radio?
Exactly.
Who knows? Is it podcasting? Podcasting is radio. Streaming services, kind of radio. There's a lot of what is radio there's radio as a technology, which is terrestrial, radio as a medium, and then there's like conceptually how consuming audio, and that's the big trick with the radio personality and radio companies and radio in general, is learning how to bridge the gap and diversifying and reaching people where they are digitally and over the airwaves. I hate to do this, but I actually have to jump on the air. It's past 3 o'clock. Wow. Yeah.
I was about to say, we're running low on time, and that we should leave the audience with that question of what is radio?
It's a great question. What is it to you? What is it not? What is it? I don't know.
Maybe
sometimes.
Next time we can answer that.
Maybe
question.
Next time we'll answer that. I'm willing to come back and answer some questions.
Justin, thank you so much for coming on Backpacking America. You have a wonderful day and grace the world with your airwaves.
Oh, my God. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I never thought I'd be on Backpacking America. And let me know if there's anything else I could do. I'm always happy to do it.
Thank you for listening to Backpacking America. If you want more content and alerts as to when the next episode will come out, make sure to follow the Instagram at Backpacking America and the Twitter, BPA Podcasting. Keep it locked.